All right, welcome back for part 2 of cognition. All right, so what we're going to look at from here on out is we're going to look at some of the reasons why you forget, some of the reasons why what you think you remembered you didn't really remember, because memory is not precise. Memory can be changed. You can sit there and we can have misinformation. So we can have all these things where somebody tells you what happened, and so that gets incorporated into what you think really happened, and that becomes your memory, even though you weren't even around and that really wasn't happening to it. So if you hear like these people tell you a story, even though you were there, their story may sound better, and you may incorporate that to be part of your memory, and you may think that that really happened. Digitally altered photos can produce imagination inflation. If you see something, you think that it really happened, even though it may not have happened, and you just think that you were there. It gets a little confusing at times, but all this can go into and can really mess with the memory construction, the way we look at things. Source amnesia is attributing to the wrong source an event we have experienced, heard, read about, or imagined. Some people think that they've read something, and they think that that really applies to them, that they really were in that because it's associated with their memory because they read about it and they feel like they were in it. Deja vu comes along with this. This is where you think that I've already seen something beforehand, so you see it again. So the cues for the current situation may unconsciously trigger retrieval of an earlier experience, which is similar, and you may think, I've already done this once. It happens. False memories are persistent throughout time period, and memory construction can be false, but you need to try to figure out ways to get around that and find out really what's going on. Children's eyewitnesses recall says that suggestive interview techniques can hurt the validity of a child's interview. I can say this with my son, and if you ever watch this, I am sorry, but I can sit there and tell him something about, well, but you did this. He goes, oh yeah, I forgot. And for him, that becomes his new memory. Can be accurate when questioned about the experiences in the news world, so you can lead them to think one way or the other way. But if you sort of like that whole reverse, and not really like it, but sort of in a weird way like that reverse psychology, no, you don't want to do that, and then you make them think they want to do that. Children are especially accurate when they have not talked with involved adults prior to the interviewer, so the adults are the ones who actually mess up the interview process for them, and that sometimes things happen because we try to talk them out of this thing. It's like if you did something you weren't supposed to, unfortunately, they try to talk them out of. Repressed or constructed memories of abuse. Sometimes kids do go through abuse, and parents convince them that they did something else because you can misconstrue what really happened, and that's just too sad. Improving memory steps. A way to improve your memory. Rehearse repeatedly. This is repetition. Repetition is another word for rehearse. Make the material meaningful. Make it mean something to you. Look at imagine what it would look like. Activate retrieval cues. Remember what it would take for you to sit there and remember things a little bit better. Use mnemonic devices. Minimize interference. This means when you do study without listening. If you study listening to music, remember, don't listen to music that actually has words in it. Just listen to music which is nothing but just background noise. Don't watch TV, don't talk on the phone, don't get on Skype, don't talk to anybody else. Just sit there and try to just be able to have a quiet time to concentrate on that. Sleep more. Sleep's important. I'm sure you've heard this. Sleep. Test your knowledge both to rehearse and find out what you don't know. I've told you in this class, for me, study it and then go through the material, and you can sit there and you can take upon it at that time period, and you can see if it works for you or not, and if it doesn't work, sorry, somebody's at the door. Take the practice test online, see if you know it or not. If you don't know it, find out what you don't know and go from there. Thinking, concepts, and creativity. Cognition is the mental activities associated with thinking, knowing, remembering, and communicating. Concepts is where we group similar objects. So we group like NFL teams all together, and everything about NFL is all grouped in one big thing. Everything in basketball is grouped in another thing. Psychology is grouped in one big aspect. History is grouped in another aspect. Prototypes are the mental image or best example of a category. Once we place an item in our category, our memory of it shifts towards the prototype. Creativity is really nice because it is the ability to produce novel and valuable ideas. You do have convergent thinking, which narrows the available problem solutions to determine the single best solution. So we're going to sit there and we're going to find out what is the single best thing for us to do to go about with everything's. Divergent thinking expands the number of possible probable solutions. Sternberg and Lombard's 5 components of creativity. A measure of creativity is expertise, imaginative thinking skills, venturesome personality, intrinsic motivation, and a creative process in general. In order to boost our creativity, which boosts our mind, which boosts the way we think, which boosts the way we remember, you need to develop your own expertise and allow time for incubation, allow time for this to work out well. Set aside time for the mind to roam freely. Allow you just to sit there and think about things. Give yourself time just to think and not have somebody else do the thinking for you. Experience other cultures and ways of thinking because it does expand your mind and the way that you look at everything as a whole. Solving problems and making decisions. So what you're going to look at is some of the ways you figure stuff out. We can solve problems through trial and error. You can solve through algorithms, which is a logical step-by-step process. This is usually what you might think of in like math. A heuristic is a simpler thinking strategy, usually speedier, more error-prone than algorithms. An insight is the sudden realizations of a problem solution. This is somewhat like the aha movement that you might experience. Confirmation bias. This is when you think something happened or is going to happen, or you say, I knew that was going to happen to me today because of such and such and so and so. So you search for information that supports their preconceptions and ignore or distort contradictory evidence. This is where you think, the reason I don't do well on tests is because, or the reason I do well on tests is because. Fixation is an inability to see a problem from a fresh perspective. So you are fixated on something. You don't see it from a different angles. You only see it from the angle that you want to see it at. Mental set is a tendency to approach a problem in a particular way, often a way that has been successful in the past. So if you think that if you need to take a test in this class and you've always done well taking tests, that you don't necessarily need to switch things off, but sometimes we do. Intuition is somewhat influences us. Albert Einstein said the only real valuable thing is intuition. It's immediate feeling or thought as contrasted with an explicit or conscious reasoning. A representative heuristic is something that judges the likelihood of things in terms of how well they represent particular prototypes. So we judge the possibility of something, we compare it with our mental representation of the categories. We try to compare things from up here with what we see going on at the time period. Availability heuristic is when we estimate the likelihood of events based upon how mentally available they are. So example of this is going to be like lottery commercials. Everybody's going to win on the lottery. Overconfidence is the tendency to become more confident than correct. Beliefs and judgments. So we always think, okay, I don't need to study. I'm going to do fantastic on this next test. I don't even need to look at it. Belief perspective is clinging to one's initial conceptions after the basis on which they were formed has been discredited. So you're still going to believe it no matter what. And framing is the way an issue is posed. Those who understand framing and use it to influence us. It'd be like, I think you're going to do really bad on the test today. How do you think you're going to do? I've already framed in your mind what I think is going to happen and the way it's been presented before you. Perils and powers of intuition is a summary of cognitive sciences. Intuition is huge. Intuition is usually adaptive, and intuition is recognition born of experience. Thinking and language. Languages are spoken, written, or signed words that in the way we communicate them. So there's 3 main building blocks for spoken language. You understand that 90% of languages or communication is quiet communication, but the language is what we speak, what we write, or what we sign. So 3 building blocks are phonemes, which are the smallest distinctive sound unit. A morpheme is the smallest unit that carries meaning, such as a prefix, and grammar are how we can write rules, and the rules in which we write things correctly. Language milestones. You're going to look at this a little bit more so in development, but it starts off with a babbling stage, ooh, gaga, 1-word stage mostly. So for mine is if you have a kid, baby, brother, sister, it's usually mine or no are the first couple words, it seems like. 2-word stages are not mine or that's mine. Something of that nature is going to be very close and whatnot. Telegraphic speed is birds fly, planes go, and stuff of that nature. It's going to be very simple ways for them to understand stuff. We acquire language as children. We pick it up from the environment around us. Statistical learning is babies come in with a built readiness to learn grammatical rules. So babies are born, bred, and ready to go and understand what's going on around society around them. Critical periods is childhood is a critical period for mastering certain aspects of language. When you're a kid, you need to be able to do so. Some children are raised outside of normal habitats. and it's hard for them to pick up the language. Sort of like the older you are and you take a foreign language, the harder it is for you to learn it. Usually before the age of 7, children need to be introduced to multiple languages for complete mastery. When we go back to language, there's also things called aphasia, which leads to the impairment of language. And this is where the language doesn't come out correctly as what it has been. We looked at Braca and Wernicke last time, and we looked at how sometimes that messes with the way that we communicate with one another. The brain operates by dividing its mental functions, speaking, perceiving, thinking, and remembering into sub-functions. So remember, the key areas of brains are often repeated. This is where you're going to look at like Braca's, Wernicke's, and how that affects aphasia. Linguistic determinism is Worf's hypothesis that language determines the way we think. Worf said that language itself shapes a person's basic ideas. This goes back to the culture thing we've talked about in class, and how if I said Santa Claus to you guys would understand what I'm saying by Santa Claus, and you already have this mental image, while somebody else in another culture may not be able to may not understand where you're coming from. It does pay to increase your word power. The most important class I've ever taken in my life is probably Latin, and to help me out with the SAT score extremely well. It is better to spend your fantasy time planning on how to get somewhere than dwell on the imagined destination. This is it for this unit. It's been a blessing. I wish all of you guys the best of luck on your next test. If you have any questions about any of this, come back and see me. Sorry it took so long. This was sort of a longer one, but I'm hoping that you guys can apply some of these memory skills that we learned in class. Remember, whenever you study, to use imagery, rehearsal, sleep, and also make sure you take good notes. Probably a key also. Thank you guys, and best of luck.